Hey, good morning, everybody. We're still waiting for everybody to come in, so take a few minutes here while we set up. Thanks.
Yeah. Almost here. So it's time to do a little presidential trivia. Everybody. You have a great day. I like to play this little game called President or Not a President.
Hello, John Morrow here.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Great.
Great. Let's do a little housekeeping. We'll get started soon. Am I coming in here? Morning.
Morning, Dennis.
Who said that?
Fred.
Hi, Fred. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Morning, Dennis. John Morrow.
Hi, John. How are you doing?
Not too bad.
Hey, Fred. Fred,
Yes.
on a completely different topic. Have you heard anything about Wine Village at all?
Yeah, I'll buzz you after. The quick side is Mr. Feinberg passed away at 94. We've had some conversations with the group down there, specifically Andy Maxim and then one of the attorneys. But I'll call you later. I'll call you after.
Okay, all right. The main thing is the project hasn't disappeared. Just poor Mr. Feinberg.
Not as of yet. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
More than 45 minutes. More than around. The bids are public now. No, we didn't catch up. We don't have it ready yet. The other two are. Okay, thank you. Can we get started? I like Dave's beard. Can you hear us? Dave, can you hear us?
We can hear you just a little quiet, I think.
You can't see us grinning either, can you?
No, you can't.
Thought I heard my name mentioned.
He's like 20 years or something like that. I'm gonna have to go. Gotta be there. You gotta figure out this backdrop. You know? No, apparently Zoom, you can do a backdrop.
Sunset.
No, I put her logo up. Want to talk about the new logo?
It's on the agenda.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you can get. David might
Hey, Dave?
Yeah.
Can you search, make sure your files are up so that we can show the logo?
For the logo, okay. Yeah, give me 1 second here.
Yeah, no, it's no big, no hurry.
It'll be
but
at the end.
At the end, you know. Thank you.
And give a brief overview of rec.
So, happy guy.
You go ahead and get started.
The old one.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. We don't mind. So
You can forego introductions.
I'm just going to call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to the October 27th, 2020 Ulster County Transportation Council Technical Committee meeting. Appreciate everybody for joining. I would like to forego introductions, but I think we should have I think we need to understand who attended. So I don't think we need to. So we're gonna call your name, and if you're here, if there's anybody we didn't call, then please let us know. So Dave, you can see everybody there. Can you call their names out?
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely go through and go down the names of who we have on the call today.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. We have Ulster staff, Brian. We have Tom Hines. We have Fred Pizzuto.
Present.
John, I think I just have it as an iPhone. Not too sure exactly who that one is.
John Moore.
Lizzie Phillips.
Yep.
John Morrow. Perfect. Thanks, John. Herb Litz. I'm assuming
Here.
Tom Wilkin.
Here.
Vernon Benjamin.
Here.
We have an 845 number ending in 0015.
That's me, Dave. It's Amy McKenzie. It's my thought.
Great. Thanks, Amy. We have a geez, sorry, this is bouncing around. Ed Pine.
Morning.
Neil Batez.
Here.
Great. Another phone number ending in 629.
Yeah, this is Daniel Souza with the New York State DOT.
Great, thanks, Dan. Another number ending in 611.
This is going to happen.
Okay, Dave, just move on.
John Schulteis. Sorry, trying to chase down those numbers as they're coming in is a little difficult because we still have people joining in and out. But I think I have everybody that I see on the list. Oh, Kristen Wilson just joined.
Anybody we haven't?
This is also Sandra Jobson from New York State DOT is also on.
Thanks, Sandra.
And I see Mike Baden just joined.
Okay. So we'll get started. If anybody joins, we'll just try to announce yourself when you join. But that's not going to work, well, is it? So a call for citizens' comments. Are there any citizens' comments? Okay, hearing none. Approval of the June 16th, 2020 Technical Committee meeting summary. Do I have a motion for approval?
Wilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkin. Do I have a second?
Second, Fred.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that. Any comment? Hearing none, any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. So we have another meetings that we have to approve. That's the approval of July 21st, 2020 Technical Committee meeting summary. Do I have a motion for discussion?
So moved. Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Do I have a second?
Wilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkin. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. We also have on the agenda an approval of the August 25th Technical Committee meeting summary that has not been prepared. So we're going to not take an action on that item on the agenda. Item number 4, communications and announcements. Brian?
There was one item that I wanted to bring up for a brief discussion. There's been quite a bit of press in the news lately regarding the status of the Street Bridge. That's the bridge between the city of Kingston and the town of Esopus and Port Ewan. I'd like to give New York State DOT staff an opportunity to provide us with a brief update on the status of that bridge. They wouldn't mind.
Hi, Brian, it's Sandra. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to speak to it. I think I sent you an email though. Do you have my email in front of you?
I don't, but I can give a brief synopsis of that as well. We received
Oh, thank you.
that the bids were submitted to the New York State DOT for reconstruction of that bridge, and each bid came above the amount of money available. Therefore, all bids were necessarily rejected by the New York State DOT. As a result, the DOT will now go back to the bid and the specification and see if they can find cost-saving measures that might reduce potential future bids, and then they will re-release it. Not very, but somewhat similar thing happened with the City of Kingston roundabout situation where bids needed to be rejected as well. So we'll have a delay in the amount of time. Regarding the current status of the bridge, though, it was closed for inspection, and I believe it remains closed. And I don't know if we have any other updates regarding the status that the bridge will be reopened anytime soon.
Sandra, do you have any updates on the status of is it going to be reopened or is it going to stay closed?
Yeah, I don't have a status on that. I'm sorry, but I can get that for you guys, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll provide it to the council. Any other questions with respect to the Worth Street Bridge?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Do you have any specific data as to what the anticipated budget was versus the delta to the lowest of the bidders?
Well, we know what it was programmed on the tip, but I don't have that number in front of me, but it was in the neighborhood of over 40 million, as I recall, that was on the tip. But we don't have the number in terms of what the bid amounts were.
So the lowest bid was over 40 million.
Let me just clarify. I know the tip was over 40 million. I don't know the exact number on the tip, but I'm assuming from the email that Sandra sent is that, and from the discussion that said that the bids were over the amount of money available that was ever on the tip, and I think it's closer to 42 or 45 million. That the bids were over that amount. We can pull, the tip is a public document. You can certainly view it, but we can pull that number if you need it. So whatever that number is, I would presume that the bids were over that number.
Okay, thank
you. Jenna, do you have any sense of what the bids were or not? Obviously you don't, but is there any, I'm assuming.
I do not, and I believe that information may be confidential, but I can go back and check on that too.
Yeah, I presume once open that they're not confidential. At least in our processes, once the bids are open, they're public doc. Anyway.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get that information for you guys.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else, Brian?
Not under communications and announcements.
Anything else from the council?
Actually, I do want to raise two other issues briefly while I'm thinking of it. I apologize. At the Friday's meeting of the statewide directors of metropolitan planning organizations, the topic of TAP and Bridge New York solicitations did come up, and New York State DOT Albany Bureau did state that those solicitations will very likely be released, they said, this fall. So it's something for us all to keep our eyes out for. If and when those solicitations are made available, we will notify them. Okay, that's it.
Anything from the council?
It's Mike Baden.
Go ahead, Mike. You're barely here. We can barely hear you, Mike.
Okay, let me get closer to the microphone. And apologies for being late. I had problems getting online this morning. Two things that are involving specifically the town of Rochester and questions more to the DOT as to who I would talk to about these. The first, and I've talked to the county executive's office and the sheriff about this, we're having real issues all summer long, particularly around the holiday weekends on 4455 with Alaska and Mohonk, and the fact that
All right, let me
want to come there.
All right, let me
Parking along 4455. I know there's signage there, and I do know it's an enforcement issue.
Mike, hold on, Mike. Hold on. We only hear about half of what you're saying, Mike. I think I know what you're talking about, and let me know if this is it. There's been issues with respect to 4455 in and around the state park and parking on the road, and it's causing a significant amount of concerns with respect to that. And I think Mike's question is there any response from NISDOT and or others with respect to that congestion in and around the park entrances and the trail access on 4455? Is that a summary, Mike? Mike, does that work for you?
Yeah. And I'm basically looking for a long-range solution. I realize the COVID is a significant factor in contributing to this, but I also think it's not going to go away when COVID relaxes. So I think we need to look at it in a bigger picture.
Okay. I know from local discussions that we had that given what happened at the one weekend day up there, that there was a move to essentially line up various towing companies so they had the capacity to move people off the roadways. I know that that's the case. That's not a long-range solution, but I know that that was one of the things that did get done. I don't know whether it was implemented or not, but I know that there was a discussion in that, and it was moving forward.
I can tell you that this past weekend there was 3 state police cars dedicated up there, as well as the 2 town of Rochester constabulary vehicles, and those 5 vehicles succeeded in keeping it very under control with minimal parking. And but again, we need to come up with a long-term solution, and I think it involves a lot of conversation with a lot of different people.
Gotcha. Okay.
I can leave it at that. I don't want to take anybody's time more on that. Second question, I've been reached out to by a number of neighbors around the Accord 209 bridge and about the Mambucas Creek and trees and blockages that are in that creek. My question is, how far off of the bridge is DOT's responsibility, and who would I talk to find out those answers?
Brian, I think, has an answer to that, don't you?
No, I don't. I mean, I've spoken with Sandra briefly on the topic, and
Sandra?
Yeah, on both topics, what I'll do is let me go back to the office because I think both issues are being worked on back in our Poughkeepsie office. So I want to make sure that we touch base with those individuals to get you the most current status or, update.
Great.
On both items, okay?
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, and apologies for taking the whole committee's time on this. It's just hard to find out who to talk to sometimes, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. No, we'll get that. Yep.
And that's coming back to both the council and the Supervisor Bodden, Sandra?
Yeah, I'll get you the point of contact for each of those two issues, okay? So
Thank
we
you.
can keep that chain of communication direct.
All right,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Anything else from the council?
Vernon, it's Vernon.
Hi, Vernon.
I wondered if you wanted an update on what's happening on the state level with transportation policies under the new law.
Sure, Vernon, why not?
Well, it's not too long, but I can read my report to the town.
Well, I would prefer if you didn't, I prefer you not read it, if you just have a summary and then you could send it to us and we'll pass it back to the council. How's that sound?
No problem. This panel, the Transportation Advisory Panel, is one of about half a dozen created as a part of the new CLCPA, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act that the governor signed into law in July. It's the most comprehensive renewable law in the country, some say the world. And the different policy groups, the different advisory panels meet for 3 hours, 4 hours sometimes at a time and dive right into their topics. They have to contribute their part of a scoping plan that needs to be finished by the end of next year. And then that will unfold over 10 years. And it really, to try and reach the governor's goals of 30% renewables by 2030 and 70% by 2040. This panel was just as busy as the others I've attended. And what impressed me most was that the agency heads and the department commissioner dove right in and rolled their sleeves up and went to work. And there were a number of issues that they discussed, and I won't go into it too much. But suffice it to say that you can expect major changes in the approach to infrastructure needs, one of which concerns environmental justice. That issue, that panel, advisory panel, actually is charged with looking at all the other advisory panels and making sure that environmental justice issues are worked into it. And that's a very dynamic group that is emerging with all this. This particular panel, transportation, was very much interested in bus issues and want to try and ensure that any urban area has mostly public transportation for people instead of cars. Funding was another issue that came up, but as usual, the adequacy of it was the issue, and the suggestions that were made don't really rise to the occasion of brand new concepts and ideas. I think that that's an issue that's going to be worked out over time. Just one other thing, the smart growth options is another hot topic issue these days. Planning new roads adjacent to or near to public transportation routes, supporting land use and infrastructure policies that promote zero emissions, address barriers, including home rule with incentives, incorporate strategic design features like sidewalks, crosswalks, and safety and reduce carbon emissions issues. It kind of reminds me of what's going on in Wales, the country over in England. They have a futures generation commissioner, and that person's job is to examine any law that's passed to see how it measures up against this whole 150-year idea of protecting the environment and the people. They've already done a major job in revising a $1.8 billion highways plan that their Department of Transportation made, and the commissioner there is pretty active with it. There's nothing else like that in the world in terms of countries are concerned, but I think in New York, they are building it into the policy, at least issues like that.
Thanks, Vern. And if you could send that report to us, we'll get it out to the council.
You bet.
Thank you, Vern. I'd just like to follow up that, our recently approved long-range transportation plan directly recognizes the Climate Act that Vernon has been referring to. It's the guiding star for our sustainability and climate section of the report. And many of the goals that Vernon just mentioned are also included in our long-range transportation plan as well. So this is very relevant to the work that we're doing, and we appreciate the update, and thank you for keeping us posted.
I knew Ulster County was up there on all this.
Thanks again. Anything else from the council? Communications announcements going once?
Just want to say I got on the meeting late to Jean Walsh.
Hi, Jean.
Hi.
That's it? Okay, thank you. New business. Resolution A, draft resolution 2020-17, support for the New York State Department of Transportation, NISDOT, targets for safety performance issues. Can I have a motion for discussion purposes?
Wilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkin. Do I have a second?
Morrow, yes.
One more time.
Morrow, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Appreciate it. I have a motion and a second. Brian.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. I'd actually like to draw everyone's attention to the supplement to the agenda packet, which is the New York State Safety Target Setting Method. It's the, thank you, David. It's shown on the screen now. This fact sheet is one of the clearest explanations of what is included in this resolution and why we're passing it now. I'll give a brief overview and then walk you through some of the steps to calculate the data that's included here, and then open the floor for any comment or discussion. This is the third time we have passed a resolution in support of the New York State DOT safety targets. We are required to pass a resolution annually because the targets change annually. If you look at page 1 of the fact sheet, the overview, this is very much part of the federal requirements for performance measurements that was included under MAP 21 and the FAST Act. And for the safety component, we're looking at 5 specific measures here. And that's the number of fatalities statewide on our roadways, and then a rate. And this is a point that is iterated throughout the resolution and throughout the safety performance measure. We're looking at ways to smooth out the data over a period of time, because obviously if we're measuring and tracking trends in fatalities, there will be spikes, there will be high years and low years. So we don't want to have those aberrations unduly affect the tracking. So there are methods to smooth the data over time, and using the rate of fatalities, which is the number of fatalities per 100 million VMT, vehicle miles traveled, on our roadways. So it's just another way of looking at the data and the fatality rate. Then we also look at serious injuries and serious injuries over the rate over 100 million vehicle miles traveled. And finally, the 5th measure is the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. That's bikes and pegs on the system. MPOs are required to do one of 2 things: either recognize and approve the DOT's safety performance measures, or pass their own safety performance measures for their planning area. This MPO has opted each year to recognize and approve New York State DOT safety performance measures. Those performance targets become effective by the DOT on August 31st of every year. And within 180 days, the MPO needs to approve their own targets within 180 days of that. So we're very much within that window right now to approve our targets. So going on to the data itself, there's a very clear framework that is explained on the 2nd column for establishing the targets. We're looking at a 5-year rate or a 5-year trend. So the latest data that's available for 2020 is actually from 2018. So 2018 was the last reporting year. So that's why you see the 2018 number in the first column of the table. And then we're looking at a 5-year trend, so that we drop the oldest year of data and we add the new year, which is 2018. And it's showing you the last annual and 5-year baseline, and then we establish a forecast and a moving average. And that is illustrated, Dave, if you could go to the next page of the fact sheet. It's very well illustrated in these graphs where our trend line is going and what the forecast looks like for each measure. The last point I'll make on this, and then I'll give you a moment to just review the tables, is that because we can expect spikes in the data, and we could potentially predict significant increases or reductions over time. There's a rule that allows us to cap the rate for forecasting at 2%. And that is, again, to smooth out and control for significant jumps.
So any change up or down 2% would be would not be like handicaps and golf.
Yeah, you can't go more than 2% in your forecast to control for that data. So that's a brief overview. You know, we're looking at, when you look at some of the rates and the over time, there have been some spikes in certain years, 2016 in particular, 2015 also. And looking at the non-motorized, there was a very significant spike in 2016 as well. And that was noted nationally. There's quite a few news articles on that spike. But then it does decrease again. So we hope it's just an aberration. We don't necessarily have a specific explanation for some of these rates and some of the changes. But it's good to look at it from a variety of angles, not just the number itself, but the rate is very helpful because, as we all know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the amount of driving has decreased significantly, and that really can influence what is happening on the road in terms of fatalities and injury rates. So we need to keep that in mind when we look at the data. If there is a significant drop one year, there might be some other reasons behind it besides the actions of engineering, education, and enforcement. That is my brief overview of Resolution 2020-17. I can open the floor for any questions or comments.
Any questions or comments? I have one, Brian. Do you know whether the state actually does the forecasting below statewide averages?
I don't. David, you sit on the safety committee of the New York State Association of NPOs. Has that come up at all? I mean, the forecast is supposed to be capped at 2%.
That's the entire intent behind that 2% cap, is that they didn't want to have a number that would, be unobtainable just based off of the data. One issue that's been, kind of come up across, in the nation is, what if you have a positive trend? What do you do then? And so, that's kind of come up. And then you have other states and municipalities that are going for, vision zero kind of goal, where, our goal should always be zero. So I think New York State's approach here, with the 2% cap is pretty, it's optimistic, but at the same time realistic approach.
Let me see if I can kind of give you a sense of why I asked the question. Is if we look at this table in attachment 1, how much of this could we fill in that would be specific to the geographic area for UCTC?
Right. So you could do this analysis at the UCTC level. We could.
Okay. Would it make sense? We're in the midst of that road safety program. Would it make sense to do this? Ask them to do this?
We have these numbers calculated out, basically, maybe from a different temporal standpoint. But yeah, we've gone through and looked at these general trends, which we can show later on if we want. I do have the presentation available.
Yeah, David's going to give an update on that.
Okay. All right. Just in the back of our head, let's just think about where we are on that rural safety program, to basically say, if we adopt these, where are we in relationship to those that we've adopted in terms of trends? Thanks, David. Okay.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So carried. Thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
Other old business, Brian?
Yes, I would like to welcome to the table today, we have a special guest. His name is Tom Hines. And while he might not be familiar to most of the people in our audience, he's someone that Ulster County staff rely on very closely. Tom is staff at Ulster County Information Services, so he's constantly providing us support on a lot of the computer work that we do in the office, particularly GIS work. He's a mastermind behind our geographic information systems here at Ulster County. He's also an FAA certified drone pilot for Ulster County. And he's been doing a number of flyovers for Ulster County Transportation Council projects that are being implemented. He's helped us give a good documentation of the Broadway corridor and the I-587 construction progress. And of course, he's always working throughout the county on other projects as well. What we asked Tom to join us for this morning was to just give us a really brief overview of the Ulster County Rec Connect online mapping tool. In the past several weeks, I've received more than a few inquiries regarding the location and extent and status of rail trails from both elected officials and just general inquiries from the public. People wondering, where can I access this trail? I think a lot of people are visiting Ulster County to utilize our trail system. And when they're here, they realize there's way more than just Wallkill Valley or Ashokan. And they want to explore more. And so they're looking for more information on where they can find access to these areas. And the Rec Connect tool was established many years ago. And I think we've kind of lost sight of it a little bit. So I just wanted to give Tom an opportunity to present it to the committee. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the giant introduction, Brian.
Yeah,
so really, yeah, the Rec Connect map was a project where we had taken a map that the tourism department had for their recreation, and we just turned it into an online map and tried to make it as user-friendly as we could. So there was a bit of mobile aspect to it. So if you have your phone, the search results are kind of relative to your location, stuff like that. And then, so we have kind of the assets for public recreation and then some of the parking infrastructure. And to supplement that, we basically take the browser's location and then offer users links to Google to search for restaurant and food, or directions to the locations, and then also we were offering links back to our tourism page for, they have a booking service for hotels and stuff. So here, I'll share my screen. So yeah, we have been a little lax on making updates to it. But I think the most recent, are you seeing the map?
Yeah.
You're good. You're good.
So yeah, the most recent update we've done was for the rail or for the Ashokan Rail Trail. And I mean, we have all the different parking spots around it. And then there's also lots of DEC parking spots around there as well. So, I mean, if you click on one of the assets, I mean, we have contact information for the people who maintain the different locations. And then we have links to directions, nearby food. I mean, we do realize a lot of people kind of coming out this way aren't necessarily packing full bags. So we got food and then options to kind of to book a hotel or a place to stay. As far as just kind of looking up assets, we set up this search where you can type anything you want, but this gave us an opportunity to direct, at least initially, how people can kind of search and what we wanted to promote. So for the most part, you just click one of the buttons and it will run the search, and so it'll give you kind of search results. You zoom in and then you can get directions and some of that information. So this still runs very well, but we need some data updates. And I think Brian had asked me recently, one, to make sure that we get the what is it, rail to ridge trail?
Yeah, river to ridge trail, yep.
Yep. So
Empire State Trail is very quickly coming online too, segment by segment.
Yep. So those were kind of the two big ones that we need to add. But so this is basically it, and yeah, so it's set up to work well on a desktop, but also it works pretty well on the phone as well.
But it's a great resource, even though it might need a few updates, which I'm sure will be done in a timely manner. I wanted to make our members aware of it, and to the extent necessary, push their constituents and other elected officials, your colleagues, toward the website to use it. I think there is sometimes can be duplicative efforts. You know, you're looking locally for ways to publicize your assets, to bring tourists to your area. This is a great way to, a great tool to rely on to help visitors get around the county and find those assets.
Tom, can you, two questions. Can you, one is do you have statistics for click-throughs on this or not?
We are collecting analytics, but I don't have them.
Yeah, but you do have them if we do have an understanding how much it's used, right?
Yes, yeah, and yeah, so we generate reports for environment like every 6 months or so.
Okay. And the second piece of that is, can you click through one of the items from the trail to booking a hotel, to finding food, just to show how easy it is to get there?
Sure. So you can see it just kind of pulls your location, and then you can kind of update. So that's just the link for the directions. You're looking for food.
Gives you all the food places, yeah.
And then from here, I mean, same thing. You can just kind of click through and then go right to directions. And then we initially had set this up to look for places to stay at other sources, but the county tourism has this book direct set up. But yeah, so this allows us to at least kind of promote locations in Ulster County.
Anything else you want to say, Tom?
We're happy to take feedback, but yeah, this was a nice project.
Is if people have feedback to provide, Tom, can they just go through the help menu? What's the best way to do that? Is there a mechanism through the tool?
So yeah, there is contact information right in the about.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate your time, and definitely appreciate your time and Department of the Environment and any other staff in creating this resource. And I really hope that we continue to use it and people find out more about it. Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
Does the council have any questions for Tom? Okay. Thanks again, Thomas.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot.
Yep. So item B, 2021-2022 Unified Planning Work Program, call for planning project proposals.
Yes, currently the call for planning projects is up on our website. If you just go to Ulster County Transportation Council and then scroll down on the left to UPWP, you'll find it there. It's a Word document for download. So the call is open. We're going to do an announcement and a press release as soon as we can. I wanted to do that in concert with our bridge, off-system bridge fund announcement as well. So we're just waiting on getting that together.
Do we have a return date for that, Brian?
Yeah, that's later. The date that I set, it's a Friday in December. I want to say December 11th. Please don't quote me. Just it's clearly posted in the document. But it's mid-December. We would like as a deadline for responses. The application form is designed to be relatively straightforward. It's not intended to be difficult. Only municipalities are allowed to apply. So if you have an organization within your jurisdiction that might be interested in putting forth a project, they would need municipal support in order to do that, and that is fine. That's one way of submitting a project. And there presently is no cash match required by municipalities. This is how it's always been in the past. If there is a cash match that is available, if you have perhaps another matching source of funds that you can offer toward the effort, it's certainly worth mentioning and can add some additional points to your application. Right now, I don't have any more details to offer. I think the application has not really changed year to year. It's pretty straightforward, and the directions are very clear in the document. So if you have any questions, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to either David, myself, or Dennis to start to discuss a potential project proposal. Sometimes there might be ways that we can address your issue of concern without doing a full-blown consultant-based transportation study. There might be other ways that we can address the issue in-house. So please be aware that that's out there, and we will do an official public announcement very shortly.
So I think two things. One is that it's important to note that these are not grants to municipalities for the studies. These are essentially requests for the Transportation Council itself to do the work. And that's an important thing to note. The second thing is do we have a date for the UPWP adoption this year?
The New York State DOT Planning Bureau in Albany prefers that we have that all UPWPs, I think with the only exception being NIMTEC, must be adopted by March 1st, 2021. That's what it was last year.
Okay.
Because they need the time to review each of the 14 MPOs, UPWPs, prior to submitting it to the Federal Highway Administration. So we will have very likely a technical committee meeting in January where we present the initial draft UPWP, and then we will have a policy committee in February to do the final approval.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Hearing none. Okay, Brian, UCTC off-system bridge funds?
Yes, I did want to make everyone aware that we will be putting out a call for proposals for off-system bridges. We have approximately $2 million in federal aid that can be made available. We've done a solicitation like this in the past and have awarded 2 bridge projects to Ulster County Department of Public Works. If you have a bridge of concern within your jurisdiction, you can contact, again, myself or David. These funds can be used toward the construction, reconstruction, or element-specific work on that bridge. It is a 80-20 split. That's 80 federal. There is a required 20% local match. As I mentioned before, there is a looming announcement and solicitation of New York State DOT Bridge New York funds. That is a 95% state and federal match and only a 5% local share for those projects. However, it is going to be far more competitive, we would suspect. So it's something to be aware of as you weigh your investments in local decision-making going forward. But we are presently trying to migrate the latest data into the application form. And as soon as that is accomplished, and we need to also review the rating and ranking criteria that our office will be using to, because it is a competitive solicitation and likely can only fund one, perhaps maybe two bridge projects here. So as soon as that application form is ready, we will make that announcement and send that out. It is eligible for Ulster, only Ulster County.
Any question? Does anybody know if you have a yellow or red flag bridge on your local inventory? Now is a really good time to think about what that application would look like. Any other questions or comments?
And this is for off-system bridges, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And we will have very clear mapping. So if you have a bridge in question, you can just contact us at any point. All we need is the bin or just the general location. We can look that information up and verify. Right. Thank you, David. David brought the map up. So we can verify whether the bridge is eligible for these specific funds. They have to be off the national highway.
Federal aid system. Right. Yeah. Whereas the Bridge New York program does not. The Bridge New York program can be any bridge, as I understand it. Right. Okay. Item D, long range transportation plan graphic design with Gilday.
Yeah, Gilday Creative. We've been working through a contract. There's two major elements to the contract with Gilday Creative. They're a graphic design firm out of New Paltz, and they've been great to work with. The two major products that we're working on are a new logo, and here you have it. This is the logo for the Ulster County Transportation Council. It will eventually start to appear on all of our documents. We'll be gradually integrating it into our printed materials and also our web design. So we hope you like it. I think it's a big improvement over what we've had in the past. No offense to the designers of our previous logo, but I think we really like the color and the natural landscapes utilizing the mountains and the smooth.
The font is actually a highway font, as I understand.
I believe so,
yeah.
yes. It's MUTC certified fonts and colors to an extent, the yellow as well. So that they will use this logo as a basis of design for our newly revamped long-range transportation plan document, which is presently being worked on. We have some decisions that we need to make as staff regarding the overall layout of the document to provide input to the graphic illustrators, and then they'll take that layout and migrate all the content of our approved long-range plan into the new layout. And we plan right now, at least I would like to do a printing and have a distribution to all of our municipal members so that everybody has a copy of the long-range plan. And then we'll be able to use that new design layout for all future documents going forward so that we now have just one standard graphic design layout. Thank you, David. David's showing online right now what some of the options might look like, but we have not narrowed it down just yet. This is just one template. And also another really important point that I want to make. This is not just about making the document look pretty. The document will now be fully ADA accessible for people who are visually impaired. That it will be able to be in that rich text format, and illustrations will have descriptions provided to them that if you're using that technology on your smartphone or your computer to help read the document, this will be fully ADA compliant.
So one of the things that we're we're currently doing is not only looking at our own libraries of photos, is asking other people whether or not they have photos that are indicative or illustrative of some of the concepts in the plan, whether it be construction photos, pedestrian photos, hazardous location photos, landscaping photos, trail photos. So I'm going to ask council members if you have good photos that you would like to share with the council. Please reach out to either David or Brian and let us know that where they can be available. We can set up a Dropbox so they can load them on a Dropbox, and we can use them. It would be nice if they were indexed and categorized, or if you think that, you know, here's a particular area of the community that is scenic or represents a scenic byway or something of that nature. That would be really important for us to think about if we can add those photos into the document itself. And we have established placeholders in the document for photos. Brian has done that work so that we kind of know what we're looking for. We're just trying to find the best photos. I appreciate if the council would help us in anything that they share. And if they're not yours, make sure we have permission to use them. Anything else, Brian?
One last item that's not on the agenda. David, you wanted to provide us with an update to the Ulster County safety analysis?
Yeah, sure. So we have the regional safety plan that we're doing in the county, in which we're taking a look at all roadways in Ulster County and looking at the crashes on them. And we've been going ahead. We've completed out our regional safety data analysis. And we're now going on to the next steps where we're soliciting input from municipalities to kind of try to gauge if locations that we've identified as being problematic and having high rates of crashes meets with reality, and to see if there's any treatments that are kind of known, like, hey, this location, if we cleaned up the signage, that would really take care of it, or if there's trees that run closely along the road, clearing those out could reduce the crashes. So getting to Dennis's comment from earlier, asking about if we had kind of that regional trend data at the local level, in this presentation that I have, we have the fatalities per 100,000. So, we've changed it down by a factor, just, to kind of give it a little bit better sense. But here we are comparing UCTC with New York State, and then against the entirety of the US. So we are looking at this data at the local level as part of this project. And then we even dive into, by municipality to kind of take a look at severity and fatalities. But the big thing is now we're at the point where we've done this network screening. So we go through and we identify along the road segments. But now what we're doing is we're looking for input using this ArcGIS online tool. And we sent out an email that provided a link to the tool and also an overview kind of this presentation actually that had been done in the past, which explained the tool a little bit. Just to give everyone an idea, if you go to the site, basically, it shows you the top 50 intersections and top 50 segments as far as crashes are concerned. And so we're asking for you to take a look at your municipality, see if the locations make sense, and if you're able to provide input on them for the safety strategies, it'd be greatly appreciated. So basically what you do is you zoom into a location, click on that location, it'll populate over the data, and we ask, is this location a high, medium, or low priority? We click there. Since this is a segment, we go through there, and it'll ask, what kind of strategies would be appropriate there. So, this is North Front Street in Kingston, traffic calming could be a good thing there. Or if there's any other things that make sense. Now we understand that, 50 intersections and 50 segments is a lot to ask for people to go through. if you have the knowledge, we ask that you share it. If you can only look at the ones in your municipality, that's appreciated as well. Anything that you're able to provide would be great. And this, again, will help feed into the next steps where we're going to be going and looking at specific locations to try to identify some improvements rather than just this network screening approach. I can send this email out again if people haven't received it, but we're asking to share, with your highway superintendents, and if you have anyone that has a particular safety interest, asking for their input.
Yeah, your first responders in the community, anybody that knows people in the fire companies or something like that, we're sending this out through our emergency management folks, but a follow-up from at the local level back to the emergency responders would be helpful. And some of the local police agencies as well. Any questions from the council? I'm not hearing any questions. Okay. I have an item on the agenda that I'd like to bring up. That's not on the agenda that I'd like to bring up. Last month, at the last policy committee meeting, we passed a resolution that essentially transferred 5307 money from Ulster County that was designated for the commuter carriers, which in this instance was Trailways. The number is approaching about $5.5 million to CDTA for administrative purposes, to do capital cost of contracting to provide services, additional transit services, and support transit services within the TMA area. As part of that resolution, the council asked us to essentially make sure that that the funds were actually being used within the TMA. And so when we reached out to CDTA with respect to the transfers, we indicated that we would like some assurances that the funds were going to be used within the TMA area and not used to support general operations of Trailways throughout the state or in the CDTA area as well. We have been to date unable to secure those assurances from CDTA. And we have reached back to the state and asked the state if they would provide some guidance or some help with respect to those assurances. So currently what is happening is that we have not transferred those funds or made the necessary TIP amendments to allow those funds to move to CDTA while we wait for essentially for some direction to fulfill the council's wish that essentially that we were sure that the funds that we're using, that we transfer to CDA, would be used for transit services in Ulster County. We're hoping that what ends up happening is we will be able to get those assurances. But to date, we have not been successful in those discussions so far. Just want to make the council aware of that. The resolutions have been signed by the secretary and are awaiting essentially a work to be done to transfer that work up to CDTA. But we're waiting for some sort of positive assurances or at least some movement with respect to CDTA as to how those monies will be used, and that they will in point of fact be used to essentially support the services within the TMA area. So the council should be aware of that. And if you hear anything about it, we certainly want to do this. We certainly support and want to support Trailways' operations within our area. They're an important commuter carrier here, and they're under a lot of fiscal stress right now. And we're hoping that someone steps up to the plate and tells us that essentially the reason that the council transferred those funds to CDTA can be met with assurances that the funds will be used to provide services in and around the TMA. So I just wanted to update you on where we are on that. Any questions? Hearing none. Any other old business?
I've just one last update. The next meeting of the UCTC Policy Committee is scheduled for November 24th. That's Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving. It will be a brief meeting, so we appreciate it if you can attend so we can assure a quorum. And during that meeting, we will have a presentation from our consultants, Foursquare, to provide an update of the conclusion of the Connect Mid-Hudson Regional Transit Study. This has been a study that's been ongoing for about the past 18 months in cooperation with Dutchess and Orange counties. And they will provide an overview of the data collected as well as some of the recommendations included in that regional study. So we hope you can attend.
Any other business before the council today? Hearing none, we're adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
You.